Right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in. Welcome to the Resonant State. As we continue on, this is going to be our third episode, and I have the great pleasure of being joined by Mr. William Ramsey, excellent researcher, a good friend, and my friend Sean McCann, not McCann, and and we're going to be actually using. I think we're going to do a dual broadcast between Resonant State and Wake the Dead. But today, William is going to be looking at the book of the Manchurian Candidate, tying this into the JFK assassination and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm really excited to step into this new field and see what is happening. And this is always relevant because if you look at our current political matrix, you can see a lot of these politicians that kind of seem like they're a little bit hypnotized or they're a little bit, it's hard to tell. And so we have a lot of these trigger things happening. You can see these flash mobs. You can see all kinds of variety of social breakdowns, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this remains very, very relevant, and the basic apparatus of the human perception has not changed, especially hasn't changed since the 1950s to where we are now. So all these things I think are quite relevant, and as is a JFK assassination, because that has transformed the entire state of the world. If you look at America as being the leading power. And this, of course, ties into the Cold War, which was a continuous state of fear the nation was in, right? It's a war. You can't win it. It's perpetual. The spies are here, spies are there, etc. It created a nuclear war, threat of nuclear war, created a whole state of fear. And it even created a state of nihilism in many people in the population, because we're going to be nuked anyways. Do what thou wilt, right? Who cares, right? So this also affects the whole moral fabric of the nation. So I'm really looking forward to this. And Sean, if you want to say something, then we'll give it to William.
Yeah, wonderful, Hans. Thank you for doing the introduction there, and welcome to all the Wake the Dead listeners out there. And thank you, William, and thank you, Hans, for doing the introduction there. I am very glad to talk about this Manchurian Candidate situation, because this is like the main nerve of what Wake the Dead is doing. I've spoken to many victims of trauma-based mind control that have parts and splits in their minds, and they have to put the pieces back together, and to really come to terms with what was done to them, who did these things, and why. So like this investigation that you're doing here, William, is very interesting for our listeners, and we are thankful to be here.
Great. Thanks for having me. Glad to be with you guys again. It's a long presentation, and like you kind of talked about in the intro, this goes back to post-war World War II, right? The Cold War, and this is a kind of a Cold War book. It was written by Richard Condon in 1959, and then the production took place in 1962. And it had big-time actors involved in it. And one of the interesting, fascinating things, among many fascinating things with the book and film, is that the film was disappeared basically in 63. It wasn't seen. It didn't have the kind of success at the box office in 62, but it's lingered on. There was a remake with Denzel Washington, which I don't think was as good as the original. It didn't have some of the interesting things, but Sinatra was kind of the leading hand. Well, the history of the film itself is really fascinating, because it was kind of greenlit by Sinatra, who's a very close friend of JFK. It was greenlit by JFK, who eventually would be killed in November 22nd, 1963. But it was greenlit by him in Hyannisport, right? This is like the Kennedy compound. They said that there was an exchange. It was by this woman, Kitty Kelly's biography of Sinatra. It's like they loved the book. And we know that JFK liked kind of, paperback books or Pulp Fiction or, James Bond type stuff, Ian Fleming. So this was something that was okay. the background of the book, like you said, takes place, it's Manchuria, right? So Manchuria is above Korea. The Korean War is 1950 to 1953. And the entire peninsula was basically bombed to smithereens. Like after it was done, there was like no building that was over 2 stories. And LeMay and all these characters from World War II who actually show up in the 60s are all involved in the Korean War too. So, and it's an environment, and all this is the nascent post-war things. Dulles, Ewan Cameron, we've talked about Salinger. These are all people involved in interrogating ex-Nazis. Some of them will be paper clipped, but they were very much involved in this kind of mind warfare, which eventually Dulles would come out with a talk called Brain Warfare, and then MK Ultra started in 53. So then that's kind of an easy way to look at this whole mind control sphere, is to say MK Ultra 53. There's a lot more going on. The operational side of MK Ultra is called MK Delta. So the investigation is MK Ultra, and then the operational side, but some people leave out. We're going to talk about the operational side today, or eventually we're going to get there. But this fiction, like I've titled this one, The Manchurian Candidate, From Fiction to Fact, is because Condon integrated so many things into this this book and then the film. And one of the close friends of Sinatra, who a lot of people may not know, who is a name kind of not as well known. I've done a show with Todd Wood of California. His name is William Joseph Bryan, excuse me. It's easy to mix it up with William Jennings Bryan, who's a known kind of early 20th century politician. But William Joseph Bryan was an advisor on this film, the film that came out in 62, and a close friend of Sinatra, and also a guy who used what can commonly be referred to as hypnosis on people. He actually had a center for hypnosis, which is on Sunset Boulevard in LA. And it was really, if you know where the Comedy Club is, it's kind of a famous place in LA. It literally was like 2 blocks away from that. So he would hypnotize people and had tons of subjects and had his own publication, believe it or not. But William Joseph Bryan was friends also. It's an incredible tale. You can't even believe where he is. He's friends with Melvin Belli, who's taking his classes, and F. Lee Bailey, who are both very well-known lawyers, who were also involved in JFK. If you remember, Melvin Belli would become Jack Ruby's attorney, which is very strange because he was a civil lawyer. He really wasn't usually specialized in civil or criminal stuff. So he kind of switched trends and became Ruby's attorney for some strange reason. He was also friends with William Joseph Bryan. Anyway, the book is fascinating in itself. It really talks about these main central characters who Frank Sinatra played. One is Bennett Marco, who was in military intelligence, right, in Vietnam. Lawrence Harvey, who passed away early, plays the Sergeant Shaw. Angela Lansbury, who's featured in Gaslight, which was one of her main first roles, and that's how the term gaslighting came into the public consciousness, is from that movie where the protagonist is playing with the head of the woman who's the thing and literally gaslighting her and lying to her constantly. That Janet Leigh, who came off of Psycho, if you remember the Psycho, she was famously in the shower. So these are like very well-known famous people. So at the time when it came out, but the book is really incredible. It has very deep kind of references, and it's very much darker than the film. It actually has stories of incest. The main character has a relationship with her father when she's young. So she's 10 and the dad would take her into the attic. Subtle references to a lot of mind control stuff. There's stories of, and if you talk to mind control survivors, carousels, attics, and things like that are things. And that's how by the way, Catcher in the Rye ends. Sorry, go ahead.
May I, so carousels and attics, this is the structure of the internal structuring of the mind. I was just I was recording with Carrie Olahe last night, and we were talking further about triggers and gatekeeper altars, and the victims of SRA, trauma-based mind control, this Manchurian Candidate technique that we will get into, I'm sure, it creates like like an internal worlds that are like physical structures, and there's like a central channel where the alters can be brought to the control room to like take control of the body. So like the carousel represents like a group of alters that work together, that work like in a pattern, that a cyclical way, the way a carousel goes. And the attic, probably it relates to the control room. This I'll bet you these are like internal structures that they're talking about. Like it's a science, the way that they don't just torture for the heck of it. They torture for a purpose, to create a robot, and a robot slave that does what it's told. And we'll see in the book of Manchurian Candidate, that's what he is. Like Red Queen, blah, and she triggers him with triggers, and then the specific alters that were called forth by that trigger, they travel up the central channel into the control room, and they take control of the body. So like these terms might mean a lot more than you may think. When like carousel just sounds like, oh, that's what kids ride, like, but it could mean a whole lot more.
Yeah, just if you don't want, say a few points here, is that one thing to note actually is that the triggered assassin or triggered information courier. You have people talking about this in the 1930s, Gordon Allport, stuff like that. So this idea of somebody, they get a trigger, they shift into a different personality. They can convey information or documents, or they will, assassinate someone and not know. So this was discussed, even, around, I think going back to the Tavistock, and then the real basis of this goes back to the Hashishans, the Sabbateans, right? And Sabbateans
mentioned in the intro to the book, by the way, the Condon's book. He mentions.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And so that's really important, because that was the sort of the initial, at least in really on the global geopolitical stage of, and in a certain way, nothing
is true, everything is permitted.
Right. Everything is permitted.
Do what thou wilt, right? Same shit.
Yeah, and the thing is,
and he's actually one of the early mind controllers, but we can go into that.
Yeah,
right.
So, and one other point too is that you see also with the media how certain actors will show up in certain roles. So they're creating this in sort of the collective consciousness of the entertainment consumers. You have character from Gaslight, right, which is a very seminal film. Really, obviously, we used to use the term now, but she plays obviously a very different role here. But then that's connected, and then of course the lady from Psycho, right? And things. So you have these parallels, and so this creates sort of resonance through the actors themselves, right?
Especially the word psycho, like psycho, right? It's about the mind going nuts, and the dude who did the stabbing, he had a split personality, which had the perpetrator alter, like he had internalized the abuser of his mother, and he, like, the alter is his mother abusing him in his own mind. Like that's exactly what is happening with SRA victims, with trauma-based mind control victims.
Yeah, traumatic mind control. Right?
They internalize
mind control, sorry.
Right. Yes, that's the term. Like they use trauma in a specific way to affect the brain in a specific way, and it goes very deep, and it's all connected. And the way that, and what Hans was saying in the beginning, like, oh, the politicians seem a little mind controlled. Yeah, that's. I mean,
you guys are ruining it. You guys know too much.
I'm sorry.
Reference is great. And it's also the frame of reference that you have is reflected in this book. Like it's off the charts. So I have this intro, which is like a piece that was written about, it was written about the movie. And it talks about two different things, because this is about spies and stuff. So it's Chinese. It's the idea that Lewinsky was actually a Mossad agent and sent in to have sex with Bill. And then somebody, George Stephanopoulos, who's very close to the family, a total Democratic operative, writes here in his book, he says, when Nixon needed to think, he picked up a legal pad and wrote outlines. Reagan composed letters. Clinton played solitaire. And solitaire is this key thing. You guys just mentioned these triggers. It's a key element of the book and film, is this cards and the symbolism and the motif flows everything together. but Bill Clinton had solitaires. You got to watch this video of Bill Clinton. You may have seen it already.
Is it the one where there's commercials running and he's getting his hair? Like,
yes,
exactly. He's just blank.
This is how we're starting it off, because
this is
you want
great.
to talk about whether you think your politician could be mind controlled. Watch this. Where's it playing?
And like he's also controlled through like sexual blackmail and all that. Like it's all that. Of course, he's an SRA victim.
She's having sex with him all the time. There's a piece in the.
She is Alice, and he's like,
right.
Sorry, yeah.
There's a piece in the. You know why the left or Clintons hated Kavanaugh is because he really wrote the Starr Report, and if you read the footnotes of the Starr Report, you realize how much she's having sex with Bill. And she was just one of the paramours, right? But she's licking Bill Clinton's butthole in the White House. It's in there, anal oral. And so it was too graphic. They actually put that in writing.
Man. So, okay. So you were saying...
sorry, can you turn up the volume? Just to say, like, this clip... of course, people may have seen it. I know there are people just listening, but the first thing is when you see him getting the makeup done, he's just like, he's like in a trance. He's like dead. He's like a dummy. He's like a mannequin. Right?
Yeah, they call that park mode. Like when you park a car, that's like the SRA victims were like, yeah, I was in park mode, where the handler says, sit down, shut up, wait. And then like everything is off and you just wait for the next trigger to turn on again. It's crazy. So, okay, wait. So,
but it's in the context of this film, which is about political assassinations, right? So this is like a fictional film, but then the 60s are full of political assassinations, real world, factual. But we'll see how this concepts that are in this fiction lead into our real world history. But can
you turn the volume up, William, on that?
I don't think that I have volume on this one.
Okay.
It says there's volume, but
yeah. The
clip. Let me go.
Thank you, Hans, for saying that for the people that are just listening. He's like a blank slate, fully blank, and they're like coiffing him like he's a mannequin. They're just getting his hair and putting the makeup on. I mean, his eyes are dead. Like, so, but that's proof. Like, of course, they're gonna have a Manchurian candidate as the president. Like, you know, it's a total robot that can be controlled by unseen forces, right? You know, like,
and his ascent and rise is very strange. Like,
oh yeah,
and he was
Arsenio Hall, the freaking play the saxophone.
He was the governor of Arkansas before he was 30.
Iran Contra, that
Mena, Arkansas,
death all over the place.
Those kids on the train tracks, like
Georgetown. Like I just did a show about Georgetown. Like was like had these MK Ultra doctors there. Like around the time Bill's there. I mean, Bill Clinton's there. So anyway, so that's how I kind of started off the presentation. But I think it's like so much stuff. The things is we're also involved in this kind of mind control. When you were talking at the intro, Hans, that we are full of conditioned responses. So like if you hear something bad, you like your conditioned response. Well, that's racism, or that's, fascism, or whatever. These people almost aren't even thinking. Their morality has been input into their brain. Their critical thinking skills are almost like gone. Like if you find somebody who can think critically these days, it's shocking. They also can't hold stuff in their brain. They just start talking over you. They can't so you see this kind of brain shaping has already taken place in the US. But one of the interesting things you said, Sean, about the carousel in page 28, Raymond's eyes, who's the main character, are like those of a carousel horse pursued by the Iranese. So like the frame of reference of Condon is really something else. He knew classical history. And we'll see a lot of these references to classicism and pedophilia and incest and things like that throughout the book, which are like, because Pitcairn Island, if you remember Mutiny on the Bounty, they went to Pitcairn Island and they all interbred. And it was just like it was like going back to it was bad. Like there was like inbreeding basically, right? But that's just one of the examples. Like he talks about the King of the Fairies, Oberon, the addict, sex with the mother, and then in the book, the mother, who's played by Angela Lansbury, has sex with her son. So before he commits the act, he remembers, he becomes kind of a sex slave to her because he's in his trance. So she's abusing him as his life. And we get into how deep it is because she's talking about the rape of the mind, which actually goes into Scientology and stuff. And it overlaps with mind control. Scientology is very much.
But
has all these
what
techniques and stuff.
one thing in the book though is the mother comes out is described almost like a Marilyn Monroe, like a real beauty. Angela Lansbury is not, in my estimation.
No, it's interesting. So, but she's like a sex pot, and she's also super manipulative, and like we talked in the pre-show, the basis that Condon used for the mother is Roy Cohn, right? So Roy Cohn is the underling of McCarthy, right? And so the Iceland senator is a McCarthyite who's, talking about, communists are everywhere. And she is the Roy Cohn figure, the fixer, the intelligent. Roy Cohn, that's a whole nother show, but he is just something else like Roy Cohn.
So it seems like the author knows what he's saying and is using those types of words on purpose to like display to the others that are in the cult. And
he also uses Illuminati numbers, right? So 77, 11, I've covered all those.
Okay.
So 11s pop in, yeah. So the 11s pop out at very important times. Page 126. Mr. Swarton, dead for 11 years, had been a wealthy alcoholic. And that's like in a narcotics. Oh, also the mother is a heroin addict in the book. She it's like bumps heroin. And then also at a key, there's 23. So 23, the Queen of Diamonds showed at the 23rd card turn. So the 23 Enigma, page 227. And then at a very key moment when Marco, played by Sinatra, realizes that Raymond is under mind control because they go to a bar and have a beer, and he starts playing solitaire, and it triggers him to go jump in the lake at Central Park, which ties into Catcher in the Rye. It's really incredible. I mean, you can watch the movie, but these overlaps are just really astonishing. But at that moment, the guy says, I had 11 somethings, and then it triggers it. So these are, and she asked for her steak. Angela Lansbury wants her steak cooked for 11 minutes exactly.
Dude, that is very important. For some listeners might not know what that's about, but definitely read your book.
Those are prime numbers, man.
That first
They've
one
been around.
The Prophet of Evil one, or the one with where you talk about towers and the flights and the floors. All those numbers are. Anyway, so another thing is the incest is that is what happens with trauma-based mind control. Like the women they are made to breed, and the children are more apt to dissociate. Dissociation is a genetic trait. And also the incest breaks the mind of the baby while it's still young, and it's the first handler of so a lot of SRA victims, their first memories that they get is incest of I was raped by my dad, and that's why I'm so bad and messed up, and then later they'll get flashbacks of being in a cage or whatever, but then so it's very important that he put the incest in the book, because he has to reveal. It's like a revelation of the method, right? It must be because if JFK approved of this, if you read Bryce Taylor, Sue Ford, Bryce Taylor's her pen name, she was brought to Hyannisport in Massachusetts, Hyannis, to service Kennedy and the other Kennedys, the young Kennedys that were the children. She was servicing them, if you know what I mean. She was a mind controlled.
Kennedys I would use the term pre-apic, which is this ancient god Priapus who just had sex.
Oh, right, Priapus.
Yeah. They and they're totally illuminated. They're in the Pilgrim Society,
right? Every
elite thing. JFK had this gay lover who followed him around all the way, and had a room at the White House. I forgot his name. You ever hear that story? He had a dude with him like all the time. He was like one of his best friends. Kennedy was bisexual.
Yeah.
And so he would bang anything, like the both brothers, and the story with Marilyn Monroe. I mean,
Right.
So
So we know that if
Sinatra
JFK approved that, then it's like, okay, that's the plan. We're supposed to reveal this now. You know what I mean? It seems like they're putting it on the public consciousness on purpose. And then, in '63, Sinatra was like, nope, no, we're not going to release that anymore. Like, whoops.
No, it's too profound. And Marilyn Monroe was with Sinatra like 2 weeks before she died. And
That.
And so these are all crazy overlapping things. Like, it's just a stew of
Marilyn was murdered, like that whole
stuff.
Yeah, it just one other thing I think is very important is that the Freudian model, right? So Freud, who actually I have come to believe is that he is imposing a system structure of how people think their minds work, right? It's and he said when he first came from Vienna to the U.S., he said, "I come not to bring healing, I come to bring a plague." He said that.
Wow.
But yeah, but that whole thing, of course, the Oedipus complex, first Oedipus is not even about incest, it's about fate, and it's about this and that, right? He didn't know it was his mom, whatever, at Oedipus. But this was so much projected in the 1950s. It was the peak of psychotherapy. Everybody, 50s and 60s, everybody had a therapist. Everybody was going into this. So
they were reading Kinsey.
Yeah, Kinsey, which is connected with Freud, right? And this whole idea, pleasure principle, and this repression of sex is what's creating all the problems. And then that goes into the whole, the Frankfurt School, et cetera. But this is all Freudian imposed conceptual modeling of the brain that is being accepted by people, right? As the working model for how human consciousness is structured.
And now that it's accepted, now they can have these movies with these types of topics. It's like the revelation goes on, and it's continuing. The revelation of the method.
Eyes Wide Shut. We've done shows on Eyes Wide Shut. That's a revelation. This movie was a revelation. The interesting thing, another aspect of this, is not only was it okay. Sammy Davis Jr., Satanist, said that Sinatra had a speed dial to the White House. Like, that's how Frank's got the White House on speed dial. So like. And also, Frank was the production, so it was done under his production company. So when this movie came out, didn't do well, and then Kennedy got killed, he said, "I'm taking this out of public distribution." So it didn't go, and it was never reshown until 1998.
It's crazy.
May I also say one more thing about Frank Sinatra? Bryce Taylor was beaten mercilessly by this guy. Frank Sinatra would beat the slaves to teach them a lesson. That was like his thing. Also, Ted Kennedy couldn't get it up unless he was beating up the woman. So like there's much violence. Yeah.
Then you have to remember at that time, like if you were cheating on your wife and you got busted for adultery, it was like a big thing back then. So these guys are involved in all kinds of degeneracy or sexual illusion. And they, like you said in the pre-show, or we were talking, Hans, there's a lot of that in this book. Like Marco he's a Casanova, right? He picks up on women very easily in the book, and he and Raymond are active, right? They're picking up random women on the street and bring them home. So there was a big no back in the day, and like to be cheating would have had huge political consequences.
Yeah, I'll just say one thing about that. And so the book, I was really surprised. When it was written, and one thing, of course, the Kinsey report, all that data was falsified, right? So people were not really having premarital sex. America was not like this, but in the book, I mean, they're literally having threesomes, foursomes every night. They're picking up women. It's just normal. Raymond is in bed with two women, wakes up, and the women, they come up and it's like, oh, I just have sex. You know what I mean? It's like, and that.
Well, they're probably program multiples too. And they're probably like giving him information while they're like, I mean, sorry.
Well, it gets weird because there's an exchange between the Vivian Lee character and Marco that it almost sounds like it's some kind of like coded conversation. It doesn't feel like it. We can watch part of it in the movie, but yeah, I mean, you can take apart this film for literally 10 hours because the effect and everything, and how smart Condon was. The literary and classical allusions are replete in this whole thing, and this knowledge of what was going on in the 50s. This kind of behavioral psychology stuff is really heavily in this and the film, and the blurring and the imagery and stuff like that. And this concept you mentioned, Sean, handler, the concept of a handler is key to understanding this film. Raymond and his mom, his relationship with his mother, Eleanor, and then the handlers of like these patsies, and it gets eerie. The overlap is just stark. It's really obvious that most of these guys are handled. Like Oswald's not independent at all. Anyway, so
right. That's why Jack Ruby's lawyer was pulled out of his normal lane of lawyering to go fix this situation. That, you know what I mean? Because he was a cult member, and they're like, "Hey, dude."
Friends with William Joseph Bryan. He was in all those guys. What's really interesting, you talk about this kind of sexual thing. William Joseph Bryan, Belli, and Bailey, who started his own skin mag, were all Casanova. Well, they're like Priapic. They're all Casanovas. Like tons. Belli was a notorious womanizer. Like, and so was William Joseph Bryan, the advisor, and friends with Sinatra, another known womanizer. Like he had sex with many people as possible, but we don't know if they're using kind of techniques of William Joseph Bryan, who said the best thing that I do with my patients is have sexual congress with them. So he got busted for having sexual relation, and it's in the California state records. He got busted for having sex with 4 of his patients, and then got busted for trying to bribe a 5th. So, and he died very young. William Joseph Bryan is really an incredible character, but just his association with this film, it's crazy.
Yeah, no wonder he's part of this production.
It's not surprising that Sinatra brought him on board. Remember, Sinatra is the driving force. He's the producer and the main actor. So this is a vehicle for him that he got the okay from JFK, who had this guy, UA's president, United Artists, while Arthur Krim was a major Democratic fundraiser and Kennedy loyalist. So that once you get that green light, it went. And it has to be seen in the context, this film, in my opinion, 7 Days in May, that Kennedy advised and had all these guys on, which was another vehicle for Douglas, Michael Douglas, is that right? And Kennedy went to Hyannisport so Douglas and 7 Days in May could film on the White House. So these guys are engaging in culture creation. Like, this isn't some kind of film that came out of a vacuum. This came right from the top, right at the head, where Kennedy's fighting with all these military heads. 7 Days in May is about a military overthrow of the country. He fired that one guy who liked to bang dudes in bathrooms, who Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly took a shot at. He fired him in 1961. So he was very aware of, like, these are like guys who were involved in the Korean War and World War II. Who were really ballers. Like, LeMay was just the most vicious MFer there was. Like, he firebombed like Tokyo, and like 500,000 people died or something crazy. Like, Kennedy was surrounded by like crazy, like Strangelove type people. Like, and that's why Strangelove is so relevant.
Could you mind going back to that previous slide, William? So this is an interesting film poster, right? It's just because this is like, that, of course, that subliminal seduction, right? This stuff was coming out about subliminal advertising. This in itself is a very odd poster, right? Because there's a text red, you got the red and black, and it's a very weird type of text, right? It's very odd. I don't have time to analyze it, but if you come in 5 minutes after this picture begins, you won't know what it's all about. That's in red. Then when you've seen it all, you'll swear there's never been anything like it. And then the red, white, and blue, and these weird, pencil drawings, red, white, and blue, of the Queen of Hearts. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the poster. I just find it very, very weird.
Can I please, the line, so like the top of the poster is white, the bottom of the poster is black. Okay. So, and there's this line of separation. That's like the liminal line of above is conscious and below is subconscious. And in the blackness of the subconscious, we see the Queen of Diamonds that represents the mind control. That is the trigger, and that the Queen of Diamonds is stamped and owns that subconscious mind and the will and the drive of, the conscious front personality is, just the face. I think that's what that's all about.
And almost implying that this picture will do some type of mind control to the audience.
Oh, yeah. yeah.
It's so crazy. This is just incredible stuff, man. What they put into this film. And they took it off for 25 years, guys. A quarter century, nobody saw this. These are some of the book covers. This is Richard Condon himself. He went on to write Preetzi's Honor. If you've seen that movie, that was kind of he had a very successful writing career. He started late, but he's a remarkable guy. Kind of lost to history. One of those guys that shouldn't be. This is another book slide. Queen,
you see the
shattered. Yeah.
Yes, the shattered self, those multiple personalities, right? Sorry.
So it's there. No, I mean, it's all there.
Yeah.
He talks about the intros and all the stuff. Hypnosis is mentioned in there. So like you can see that in this thing. Raymond's, and this is kind of one of the 11 references that I found. This is a key sequence, like I mentioned earlier, when Raymond plays solitaire at the bar. Those are 11 in the background. It's a package deal. And for 11 long years, I got this grump tied around my neck. And believe me, it's no bargain. You've got no idea. And then Raymond gets up and goes. But this is an interesting thing. This is from the intro, written by Condon in 1991. There was a popular notion, undoubtedly self-protective, that no one could be persuaded under hypnosis to do anything which was inherently abhorrent to him. Reams of research proved this to be untrue. Countless murders have been committed while under continuing hypnotism of patriotism, religion, exclusionary societies, self-righteousness, and tribal innuendo. Brainwashing as a fictional device has been accepted by readers of the Manchurian Candidate because they knew it was a true condition willingly arrived at. So,
yeah, look at statism, right? Sorry, but the idea of being abhorrent to him, which him? If they make many more hymns inside and they program one of the hymns to be a Satanist, which loves to drink blood or whatever it does, like they're that's one of the things with these multiples. The personalities have no idea that the others exist, and the front personality will be a nice Christian that does things and loves neighbors, and but inside there's a cult loyal personality which does whatever and thinks that evil is good, and these are switched, and who knows which hymn. You know what I mean? The Christian front altar, it might be abhorrent to kill this person on a stage with a rifle, but to the other personality inside, which was called up by the Queen of Diamonds, or, it's perfectly normal to shoot this person who's on stage with a rifle in front of everybody. So that
William Joseph Bryant, the consultant to this film, has stated in public and recorded interviews that with the right amount of drugs, hypnosis, and torture, anybody can be broken and told to do. So they figured it out, and that was the whole MK Ultra thing, is to learn these techniques, and then make them operational. Which is MK Delta.
And just what's interesting, the two previous paragraphs of this introduction. So you have this. I'll just parse this real quick. So it can be said that the essence of patriotism, as it has been used by those who attempt to manipulate us, is to be found within the three symptoms of paranoia, which aptly describe the rise, decline, and fall of the West. Retrospective falsification is also the basis of all storytelling. The essence of fantasy, which is what fiction is, derives from it. The delusion of persecution creates the conflict which is necessary between good and evil, without which all stories would collapse. Paranoia, therefore, is the natural condition of all novelists, whose purpose, after all, is to mirror their society. Paranoia, in these fantasy terms, is the natural addiction of all readers. There is nothing abnormal about it. A story is a story is a story. It is a form of therapeutic paranoia. We are able to think in further categories so that the light which is required for such explanations will illuminate the deeper shadows of our lives. Quite interesting, right? Quite interesting. So
you could see how deep a thinker Condon was too, right? Like he's writing pretty in complex. He started late. I think he didn't write his first book till he was after 40. So I think that's interesting. But yeah, it's remarkable.
It's the delusion of persecution creates the conflict, and like I'm imagining about like the most favored nation and all of their evil that they're doing, and they're like, but we're victims, guys, like I see that, and we allow it as a society. We just, it's just, well, they're victims, it's in the Bible, so we are all like, maintained under mind control. But anyway, sorry.
But so here's the thing: paranoia. If you what he's saying, I will fundamentally, hopefully, disagree with. I hope it's not true, but saying that basically everyone's natural condition is to be paranoid, but he's also saying good and evil is a delusion, right? But you live in this state of paranoia, and the novelists are in a state of paranoia because they mirror society. So in a state of paranoia, you no longer have autonomy. You are in a state of projective identification. And so basically this state of paranoia, though, is the state of the priming of the larger scale population for hypnotic suggestion, mind control, right? So,
right. The trauma-based mind control is based on fear and anticipation of the more trauma that's coming, so that paranoia that's what fuels the drive of the victims. Like, I better do what they say or else I'm going to get myrtleized again or whatever,
Right. And the reference to Cone. So Cone, Angela Lansbury's character, Eleanor, is the basis of Livia and Roy Cohn. Are the two influences. So it's right there on the top of the page. Livia, for people who don't know, was like the ultimate kind of insider poisoner and killer who like put people into power. So that's kind of the theme of this Handler theme of her and her relationship with her son, who she rapes while he's under hypnosis. It's pretty dark. So anyway.
That's how it's done, sadly. Speaking of really dark, I wanted to say that it's Manchurian. Kind of like there was all that stuff happening in Abu Ghraib. Over there, they do that stuff over there, not here in our little land. And so that, it's the enemy that's doing it. But really, who's running China? Before, like, we had Kissinger, like, opened up China and all this. But they, even Korea, and they are doing the black ops and the mind control stuff over there because that's where it's legal, in quotes. You know what I mean? They can do the Abu Ghraib torture over there, not here, obviously. So this Manchurian candidate makes the readers think, oh, that's what they do in foreign lands. Like, that wouldn't happen here, right? Exactly. It kind of implies that.
Yeah, what's the base in Cuba where they were doing MK Ultra type stuff, sensory deprivation and
Guantanamo. Yeah, they gave them masks on their face as part of the torture. That's where they learned that
sensory
from.
Deprivation. They had stuff over their eyes and ears, so it's basically Ewan Cameron type stuff like depatterning. A lot of those guys were tortured horrifically, and they're trying to get money. For people who don't know, there's still ongoing litigation about Ewan Cameron. So
really,
they actually revivified it. It's like back on in 2025. Somebody who did all this like treatment at McGill, buddies with Dulles. I write this stuff, dude.
Yeah.
Literally, Dulles had Cameron go to interrogate Hess. So like Hess was tinkered with. He's like, they're poisoning my food. What's going on? People just thought he was crazy. I'm like, not. I don't think you're crazy, man. I bet they were tampering with everything. But like he was part of the thing, and those guys are all involved in those things. Kissinger, Salinger, all. And I mentioned that earlier. Anyway,
it just what I stated in the intro, right here in this introduction, which actually I have not read this before. He's saying that everyone is under a condition of hypnosis, the entire social structure, and this last line, brainwashing as a fictional device. Now, probably not fictional, has been accepted by the readers of the Manchurian Candidate because they knew it was a true condition, willingly arrived at. So the will has been usurped, and people have voluntarily entered into this state of mass hypnosis and mass mind control. So he's directly referencing that. In fact, describing it, I think, in very sort of bleak terms. Or
it's funny that he connects it to politics too. I mean, I just wanted to say that statism is mind control. Everybody, voting doesn't help. Like, you're under mind control. Just wanted to add that in there.
Oh, well, let's let you continue. We
no, it's all right.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, man.
This is fun.
You're bringing up things I didn't even think about. Like, I looked at this, I was just really interested in the last paragraph, but now that I reread it, like, new things come to my mind. One of the interesting things, Sinatra wanted John Frankenheimer to direct. John Frankenheimer came out of TV. I think he had done stuff for Twilight Zone. And then Frankenheimer then directs 7 Days in May. So there's a direct connection between him as kind of a left wing, and we'll see this in RFK's death, which happened in 1968, which ties into this film, which is really incredible. So here's another reference to the 11s. You know, I want my steak to be braised for exactly 11 minutes, says Eleanor, the Angela Lansbury character. This is just a picture, give you an idea of Manchuria, where it is north of Korea. So this is like where this is I'm going to ruin the whole book and every movie. But basically, they're in the Korean War. There's a troop of 11 members, right? They're abducted into Manchuria. They are mind controlled. And then Raymond gets this Medal of Honor, with there are only 77 medals of honor, more illuminated numbers given out. The Medal of Honor, so becomes a war hero, and they're going to elevate him. But then he's going to be handed off to his American handler. You don't know who his American handler is. So he comes from the communist world, communist bloc, to America, to his handler. Turns out his handler is his mother. So this whole handler thing is very important. He's handled by another guy who's a doctor named Yen Lo, who also comes to the United States, to New York City of all places, and revivifies his conditioning, right? So there's some kind of alter or some other personality that Yen Lo is triggering. And it's very sophisticated. Actually, the references, I'm going to show the video. We can go through the video because I think it's one of the most brilliant sequences ever filmed, which is the sequence of the 11-member troop in Manchuria. They think they're at some kind of gardening thing. They're smoking yak dung or yak manure, thinking they're smoking cigarettes. But these guys conditioning them, and they're going to condition to forget. They're also talking about suicide protocols, which ties into this movie, and which is a known kind of thing. I literally had a guest on yesterday, it was Friday. Her name is Patty Jo Munisteri, and they were asking her about how you could have suicide protocols. That was part of her research at Georgetown, of all places, under this guy Mizior, who I'd never known his name, but it's just another guy who had an above ground, practice, much like Jolly West or you and Cameron, who externally are, upstanding members of society, psychiatrists, but they're doing dark magic, dark persuasion, dark stuff. Anyway, so
I just wanted to say that the mother being the handler is very significant. This tells us that he was sent there with those 10 other members on purpose to be programmed in Manchuria and then sent back home to the cult which sent him to begin with. Like, that was in order to give him the mind control, and his mother condoned it. Like, why did those people get abducted and tortured like that? Why? What happens over there? And like, you look at even the Vietnam stuff with Dave McGowan and Michael Aquino and type of psychopathic stuff that they're doing over there. That's where the operational MK Delta is working, right? And that's where you get your programming. And then you come home, Netanyahu got taught in Philadelphia College, It's like they send them to the place where they're doing the operations for the training, and then they come home to do the job that they're meant to do. So like the whole thing of him going to war and being a soldier, and like that is, soldiers get elected in politics. If you're like a hero, whatever, it's like part of the persona of this politician that they're creating. They're creating a person that they can use as a robot. And this whole going to Manchuria is just part of how you break his mind, how you do the thing. So I just want to say that it's not like, oh, it happened by some foreign government over there. This is a worldwide cult of Satanism that is above countries and that type of, politics and stuff like that. Like Bill Clinton earlier with his face blank, like he works for the higher cult and he's just doing a job as president, So same thing. This is how they create. That Abu Ghraib, I'm sure they were creating a bunch of crazy psychopaths over there too. It's still going on. It works.
Perfect example is like Dulles, who's a member of the Knights of Malta, and after the war ends, he's buddies with a lot of these guys who were ex-Nazis.
Right.
The guy who was running the Soviet intel stuff, his name is Galen, right? So he and Galen are hanging out. Galen actually comes to the U.S. These are former adversaries that because of other kind of supranational connections, we don't know all the other supranational connections. What you're mentioning that stuff, how does Oswald go from the military to Atsugi, back to the States, into the USSR during the height of the Cold War, come back out and get a job and go back to society without going to jail? Like, how does this happen? There's some other thing that explains that. People didn't know this at the time. They just thought he was a communist adversary, but it's obviously been sheep-dipped. It's obviously that they wanted him to have this. And this is exactly what you're talking about, Sean, about Raymond. He goes there to get kind of knighted. He gets mind controlled, but also to get the Medal of Honor. So the fake story is that he was a great war hero. So he comes back to all these honors, only 77 Medals of Honor. And it shows the illuminated aspect of this. So if you read this and you don't know the illuminated numbers, you're just thinking, oh, this is just some kind of like political intrigue. But I think what Condon is saying is there's something even deeper going on. Mm-hmm. And you have to be kind of member of the cult to know. The Illuminati or whatever you want to call it.
Right. The book was written for the cult, not for us. It just happens to be a good book for us too and make money. But really, it's about them. And, just like all the Super Bowl.
Well, the profane will never see the internal kind of secret.
Right, exactly. Right. Bill Clinton's teacher, Quigley, can write tragedy and hope, and like they don't worry about the truth getting out there because nobody reads anymore.
I think Quigley said he was like on board with it. Like he wasn't a critic. He was like, this is what they did. And
he thought it would help the world. Like
he says it's great. I mean, he wrote it as lauding all these.
Yeah, as a hope.
International finance. I mean, but he revealed, of course, the book though was censored. So certain chapters were taken out. You have to get the original edition so that some of the information was removed.
Right. Yeah. They destroyed the plates and then they reprinted it. Yeah. Right.
Wow. That's very clever. That's what they do.
Right.
They just
and it goes to show like what Bill Clinton was sent to Georgetown to get his programming from this guy, like who was thinking it's a good idea to have this, Anglophile world order. You know what I mean? Like,
right. He became a Knight of the Round Table, a circle or whatever. Yeah. He was part of the, Rhodes. He became a Rhodes Scholar. And he had to leave. The word on the street is that he was raping women, and that's why he had to leave England. Because he's a serial abuser. But he had that kind of priapic quality to himself. He was always doing this stuff. Like
and then you look at Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, that Marilyn Monroe programming movie where she's in love with this walrus-looking guy who owns diamond mines in South Africa, who's going to give her a diamond tiara, and that's she'll give him sex. Like all the diamonds are forever. That like the whole thing of like Rhodes and the Anglophile world order, like it's sick when you get down to it. And it's all Marilyn Monroe too. Like all of this is continuing on into these Hollywood people. Sorry.
No, but this is important because Bill Clinton he's knighted or whatever. He's crowned to be a future politician, a president, and he's the head. He's there. What's going on at Georgetown? We know there's 2 MK Ultra doctors there, Mizior and Geschichter.
Mhm.
They literally set up a new wing to their hospital that they were going to use as a safe house to recruit other doctors into the program. So it was like a multi-level marketing thing there with their own little wing. Like who else are they
Run by the
with?
Jesuits too, right?
Right. Like a secret society within a secret society within a secret society.
Yeah, just like Rhodes said, rings within rings, right? Just like, yeah, okay.
No,
that's power right there.
That's the fact, right? So we're talking about fiction in Condon's movie and Sinatra's Manchurian Candidate. But these facts, these are the same things. What's happening to Raymond and his handling is got to be happening to other things and other people. Like I think that probably Obama has handled somehow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Obama, what's interesting is Obama is so mysterious, right? Nobody knows him from college. Nobody.
Except for the crackheads who he sucked their dick.
No, but I mean,
sorry,
nobody. He is a complete cipher, right? He is complete.
Yes.
But he worked. He was in like Afghan Pakistan border when he was in his 20s. It was super high level. The CIA cutout company. I forget the name of it, but connected with BCI.
Now that comes to my mind, wasn't it Obama or Clinton who got sent to Russia and then some mysterious Russian trip? Like he somehow got behind the Iron Curtain in like 84. Did you ever hear that story? Like I think something weird like Oswald or like Raymond Shaw. But yeah, no, nobody saw him. And in law school, he went to Harvard Law School and he became the editor-in-chief without doing any work. So,
without even being there.
He got this very prestigious position, and nobody thinks that he's done really any real heavy lifting for it. Like, where's his papers and stuff like that?
Well, he probably all the heavy lifting was behind closed doors. Like this, he was doing that.
Yeah, no, he's a relative
gravy work. It's gross,
dude. They have them in the wings, dude. They've got him. I mean, we can talk about boys' country or man's country in Chicago. He's definitely a member of man's country. But yeah, so I mean, you see this kind of handling thing it's real. Sinatra was in a movie before the Manchurian Candidate where they killed the president, shoot the president. So it's an interesting kind of thing with a rifle as he's driving in a motorcade. So he's in this, and then Oswald does it. Supposedly does it in 63. Yeah.
Holy shit! I'm gonna get that movie. Thank you.
Suddenly, he's a what does it say? Savage, sensation, hungry killer.
That's them. That's psychopaths. They want sensations. They want to drink the blood and rape and do all that. They don't care. It's all for me.
And then Sterling Hayden's in this with him, who's Jack Ripper or whatever. Ripper, the nut job, a guy who starts Strangelove. So,
yeah, that actor's amazing.
So, I mean, this is such a heady era. It's really incredible.
It just had this film poster with that yellow background, but you see that blue, sort of off blue color, and then you've got him as sort of the essence of subconscious, whatever, right? And then that's right there, parallel in line with the Oscar statue in the same color, so that, anyway, it's quite interesting, right? I'm sure that's not accidental, but
it really is, because it's just Sinatra's mob. They didn't know how deep his mob connections were until kind of like the mid 60s, but he was always mobbed up.
Right.
And very close. His parents were in the mob, or mob adjacent. This is the intro to Manchurian Candidate. The motif again, the Queen of Diamonds, very important. And they explain why the Queen of Diamonds is important. They want the Queen of Diamonds because Raymond has a terrible relationship with his mother, right? He doesn't like his mother or his stepdad. And his real dad's dead. But I think the implication is that he's actually it's like Chinatown, because Eleanor's dad is the father of Raymond, right? So, like, when she bangs Raymond at the end, she's having sex with her dad again. That makes sense? I mean, it's really dark. I think
aren't the playing cards relating to tarot cards? And
originally, yeah.
Right. So, like, the Queen of Diamonds is like, I mean, is that the like there's the priestess and the high priestess, and then there's there's different level, and each suit has like Prince, Queen, whatever. I think it might relate to a tarot card. That might be why they're doing that, because the occult people they'll instantly recognize.
So the Queen of Diamonds is played. Let's see I'm trying to think. This is the kind of thing. The nation jealously guards its highest award for valor. It starts off with Raymond Shaw coming out. Congressional Medal of Honor in the Korean War with 5,720,000 personnel engaged. Only 77 men were so honored. One of these 77 men was Staff Sergeant Raymond Shaw. So this is his whole sheep dip. He's been sheep dipped as a hero 77 times.
But they said one of these 77 men.
Yeah.
77 is Oz. That's the number of the magician, and the exalted will, and so the 77 men
Crowley's
are
the man, right?
Right. Yeah, the people that follow Crowley, the dark occultists, are the 77 men. That's the type of
right. Well said, yeah. So it plays on that, and then this is right at the beginning. So they're telling you this is the intro 77. They're putting the illuminated numbers. They play around with that in Eyes Wide Shut too. There's that 7/7 sequence where Cruz is talking to Kidman with the kid, and he's like 7, and she goes, "Yeah, 7." Remember?
Right.
I'm sure. Right. So it starts off Marco Shaw plagued by the same recurring dream at what time is that on the clock? 3:11, right?
Oh, yeah.
Number. And then I'm going to show this. This is this recurring dream, and this is the sequence that we can kind of analyze because so just to repeat that, it's very important because it's showing the thinking that's gone in behind this kind of hypnosis. He even doesn't try. He avoids the word. He actually says brainwashing, as they call it now. So these are just labels to Yen Lo, which I think is very clever. It shows some depth and knowledge. But he says these three papers, and there's tons of papers out there. Hypnosis. You can go actually right now to the World Institute of Hypnosis website and just see that it's all over the world with just paper after paper after paper.
So have you looked up these are actual references that they're giving?
No, but I think this is actually a direct, what Yen Lo just said right there I found this right in Condon's book.
Yeah.
So it's a direct quote. Now there's a lot of direct quotes from Condon's book in the screenplay, which I think the guy's name is Axel Rod, who made it for the screen, wrote it for the screen. But I do think it's important because I think Yen Lo's showing the high level, he's a doctor. He's talking about the high level thinking about doing things that are repellent to your nature, and that there's papers on this. And there are papers on this. And like I said earlier, William Joseph Bryan said he could get anybody to do anything with the right amount of torture, drugs, and hypnosis.
And you notice how he laughs at morality. I mean, he kind of makes a joke about it, whatever that is, where it's subjective for each person, but also kind of they're satanic. They don't have. They're looking from a scientific perspective, and they're trying to find the best way to make a robot. Torture is just a means to an end.
One of the papers that William Joseph Bryan has is robotization. How to create robot. It's interesting.
Wow.
I bet you didn't know that. I'll find the robotization of the mind. He literally, and that's kind of like a modern term. Robot is a kind of a modern technical term. I don't think they had that.
It means slave, literally, right?
Yeah, let me see if I can bring up that paper.
I think it does.
This is really, it just shows this guy's in the book, he's from the Pavlov Institute, right? So Pavlov is very famous for his controls on automated responses in dogs, right? Salivation if they hear a bell, which is why they put a bell in schools.
Right.
In Pavlov, the mind control in the school system itself is another show, but
operant conditioning is the word, right? And that's why he was using conditioning, because that's the real term, right?
Yeah,
right.
Which, I think a lot of people's thinking in America is conditioned response, like I mentioned.
Yeah. And it comes through the television.
Absolutely. We're under hypnosis of some sort, or some kind of mind control for sure. So he says here, very important, or if it offends you that only the West is working to manufacture more crime or better criminals against the modern churches. So they think the West is creating them. But then he mentions two Slavic guys working on the same type of thing, how to create violence and self-destruction. So they mentioned the self-destruction programming, which comes into play at the very end of Manchurian Candidate when Raymond Shaw kills himself. Sequence there because the little lady's holding it like a dagger.
Yeah, she's fondling it like
combat.
Eastern Bloc stuff. They're like kind of ragging on each other. The Chinese guys bitching about the Russian communist, right? So he's talking in Russian as well, kind of saying, "Oh, you're a young country, right?" Because the Chinese. We'll flash back to these sequences too here in a sec, but it is interesting because if you talk to some of these victims who've been tampered with, their memories they don't differentiate between dreams and reality as well as other people. Right. So that break between the reality and sleep dreams is blurred more in these people, and that's one of the things you'll find out. Like,
and the memories that are held down in the altars that aren't allowed to come up in normal waking hours can bubble out in the dream. So please, Hans.
Yeah, and one thing, there was a lot of research that was done from 60s and 70s about how television, even watching television for an hour, will put you into this sort of dream state of consciousness that can last for 2 weeks. So television literally induces a hypnotic, persistent hypnotic trance where you're in this state where you can't, you start to lose that differentiation between dream and reality, right? So that's literally from television, oh, there you go. Okay. Well,
that's William Joseph Bryan, who I keep mentioning.
Okay.
Literally says, physician finds CVMI form hypnotism. So.
Well,
you are tuned in, Hans. You really know what's going. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. These are later. I mean, we're gonna have to do like 6 hours on this because
that'd be great.
We're 1 hour 15 minutes.
So wait, right after he wakes up,
Have any other?
right there. Yeah. Everybody look. If the people looking should see the open negative space of the table is a trapezoid. And these guys are the power elite. Well, I mean, they're the military intelligence. The owners are the ones that are doing the Delta, MK Delta. But this trapezoid is, if you all remember from 2001, the beginning of 2001 with the apes, when they are touching the monolith and communing with the satanic force, they are looking up, and that the monolith turns into a trapezoid, this exact shape right here. So that is like a very photographic element that shows us the satanic force. There they sit.
It's almost like it's a pyramid too, with like a ball at the top and this perspective too, right?
So that's Tanit. Tanit is the goddess of Phoenicia, the one that they would burn the babies to in the Moloch fires. So you got the upward pointed triangle, and it's crossed off at the top, like with the pyramid that's missing the capstone or whatever, and then above that is the circle, and so that's Tanit, and it's all so all right. I'm gonna stop.
This isn't by mistake. This is all like the people have thought about this, this is for real.
And the Eye of Providence. Just one more thing. The Eye of Providence.
Right, the Eye of Providence
above the pyramid, right?
Right. So they're like thinking on world. This is his father-in-law, the senator, who's based on McCarthy. And then again, Lansbury's Roy Cohn, right? Or Eleanor. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming thing that shows Eleanor knows that later in the show, which I'll show you in the slides, where she kind of programs him to remember the exact number. So that's like a little kind of subtle element, right? So they repeat the same thing over, right? So post-hypnotic suggestion or something like that. Like that's the way you're going to think of Raymond Shaw. The kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've ever known in my life, which Sinatra just said. So, let me go back to these kind of slides. We'll follow through these are kind of some of these things, but he repeats that statement. This is actually from the website of the Motion Picture Association. This is a background thing of Raymond Shaw, aka Lawrence Harvey. This is a back slide. And he also gets enticed into doing this stuff by somebody giving him a call. This is very important later on, is that somebody can call and say the right phrase and it'll trigger something. So it's not just the visual symbol, but it's somebody making this statement. Why don't you pass the time by playing solitaire? Right. So that's how he gets triggered here. He ends up in the hospital. And this is another edition of the element of this thing where he's in New York now. It's a fake hospital stay, and he's back under conditioning. So Yen Lo comes all the way to New York, and he's under the gaze of the Queen of Diamonds. So there's Yen Lo now. And it's just interesting because if you look at some of these guys who Sirhan, and Oswald, strange hospital stays. Oswald supposedly was in the hospital at Atsugi for 2 weeks for a venereal disease, which I've never heard of. I guess maybe it's possible, or it doesn't seem plausible to me, but we'll see. Other people were at Atsugi too. Well, Oswald was at Atsugi, which is kind of the Air Force base that covered the U-2 spy planes. But the way that a lot of these bases, they have other things. We know for a fact that Gottlieb was at Atsugi right around the time Oswald was too. So while he's in jail, is Gottlieb the Yen Lo for Oswald? I think that's an open question. I think it's a good question. I don't have the answer for it. But you can read the Kinzer book, and the Kinzer book will verify that. Kinzer. And Oswald was handled by a bunch of different people. Carrie Thornley, and Ruth Payne, too, was another one. She was really something else. That was his kind of handler in Irving, Texas. She drove him like a good little boy right to Dallas. Pretty interesting. Anyway, he's in a fake hit and run accident. He's at a Soviet safe house. Yen Lo says, I'm from the Pavlov Institute again, so you get the Pavlov reference. And then he says here, this is actually this is a direct quote from the Condon book. And the quote is, Dr. Lo, he's talking to Shaw. He says, do you realize, comrade, the implications of the weapon that has been placed at your disposal? So he's talking about him as a weapon. He's talking about Raymond Shaw. A normally conditioned American who has been trained to kill, then have no memory of having killed or programmed to kill. He doesn't use the word program, but trained to kill. A normally conditioned American who has been trained to kill, then to have no memory of having killed. Without memory of his deed, he cannot possibly feel guilt, nor have any reason to fear being caught. This is 1962. This is 1959 from the book. It's so important when you're talking about Sirhan. Without memory of his deed, he cannot possibly feel guilt, nor have any reason to fear being caught. And having been relieved of those uniquely American symptoms, fear and guilt, he cannot possibly give himself away. Raymond will remain an outwardly normal, productive, sober, and respected member of the community, or I should say, if properly used, entirely police-proof. His brain has not only been washed, as they say, it has also been dry cleaned. Ha ha ha. So he literally says, I can pull the video up. But
it's also interrogation proof because they can't remember that, so they can torture him all they want, and those alters won't come out unless they show him a Queen of Diamonds, and then they'll spill the beans. So it's another way of like keeping all that information. Like that's a huge part about the trauma-based mind control, and the trauma causes amnesia. And so that is the major function of this. And there's like amnesia walls between the parts of the alters. So this is the trauma is necessary, and seeing the violence of their friends being shot in the head is what fuels the mind control. Because like people that have been raised in that type of conditioning, they are they grow up to follow orders because inside of their minds. They're not going to get raped anymore as an adult. But when they were kids, they got these memories of like, total abuse. And that memory is locked away until the front personality does something wrong. And then it abuses itself in its head. Like, so it keeps the front personality in line with that trauma. So they're waking up from this horror, but that's what's hidden inside, which fuels the mind control. If they didn't have that horrific trauma, then it wouldn't stick in their heads like it does. I mean, it's just wanted to bring that up before we go as an important piece of it.
It's interesting that how much Condon knew and how much was put into this film. Like, this is knowledge. This is Sirhan. He has no recollection of the event. He sat there when he acted like he didn't do anything. He was handled by a girl in the polka dot dress. This is all not almost every person who's written about the JFK. I've talked to two people people who talked about the RFK killing. I've had two people on my show to discuss their books, Lisa Pease and Tim Tate, who also did Conspiracy of Silence. And they wrote these books. This is a known person who was saw, the girl in the polka dot dress. She was never identified, but she clearly was around Sirhan, and then somebody said she tweaked his elbow, and he went into the firing position. The kill shot for RFK came from behind his head. It came from about an inch. They got Horiyuchi or whatever his name was, Lynn Noguchi was the medical advisor. He was very independent, to his own credit, very independent, and would make decisions that they'd never report in the news. But he's like, yeah, the kill shot came from like an inch behind where RFK's head. Very important moment. This is a political assassination. It plays into this film because this is the ending assassination in this film takes place at, of all places, the nomination, right? And so RFK accepts the nomination at the Ambassador. Yep. Who drives RFK to the Ambassador? Frankenheimer. Mm-hmm. Who brushes by Sirhan at the Ambassador? Frankenheimer. Who asks after the shooting, did I make, this is from Ed Sanders' book. So Ed Sanders, who wrote about Manson and stuff like that. We're a great researcher. He's like, Frankenheimer asked the question after RFK. He was deeply disturbed because RFK was using Frankenheimer's house as kind of a safe house while he was campaigning in California. And Sirhan's moving around. He's in Northern California. When Bobby goes to Northern California, he's weirdly getting put into place, just like Raymond Shaw's getting put into place. He's moving from Manchuria. The fiction is a precedent or precisely rhyming or predicting the facts of all this stuff. Anyway, so this important sequence.
No, absolutely. And then, you see, like, say, Jolly West, right? Jolly West visits Sirhan in prison. He visits Jack Ruby. Suddenly Jack Ruby's offline, right? He's not going to talk, you know what I mean? So you have these little reprogramming, reconditioning of the subjects, right? And
he visited Manson in jail too.
Yeah. It's
Patty Hearst.
Right.
Patty Hearst. Yeah.
Guys, there's overlapping MK doctors all over the place.
He's like that. He's like the Chinese guy. But then also one of the things about this conditioning, I mean, I do feel it's much more advanced than just simple operant conditioning, right? That this is the most basic form of conditioning. It's a self-conditioning, it's a stimulus response. There's more layers, but basically what they're doing, they're creating a self-enclosed system. So the individual becomes a self-enclosed system. They have their past, the trauma, all these different actors, all these different alters. It's all within their own mind. And then they can be governed externally through the triggers. So they're not able to access the external. Everything is being filtered through this internally represented system, right? There's no information from outside. That's very important, right? You create this self-enclosed system, then you can do very clear governance of that system. Okay.
That's very well said, Hans. That's great. Thank you so much. I mean, this is like we're kind of getting close to my cutoff time. I gotta pull the plug on my end at least.
How
You
much
guys
more
can
time do you got? How much more time do you have?
maybe I could do like 5 or 10 more minutes.
Okay, let's try to stretch at 10, and then we can
Okay.
do a part 2.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
So this is an interesting scene right here, where he's talking. She's talking to him, and he can't remember the number of how many communists there are because he's making it up. So he asks her, "What should I do?" And she says, "Say 57." Right? So she says 57 because he can remember the symbol in his brain. Right? So she's actually using like an NLP method to have him remember. So then, and later on in the film, he says there's 57 communists. It's because he is holding a Heinz 57, right?
It's funny because the programming of the commercials and the advertising of Heinz put that 57 in his head to begin with, and she's just using it because it's convenient and it's already in there.
It shows her knowledge of the handling. So Condon, as he's written the Eleanor character, shows that she knows this stuff. And that's something that you could miss when watching this film, because this is a film you really can take apart. Not every film you can, but it shows that Condon's writing that character to know how she can insert ideas and keep them in people's heads. And a lot of these kind of influencers and guys who do speeches and stuff like that, they know these techniques, NLP techniques. One of the other things that you'll see kind of in these MK Ultra type things is the morphing of characters. We've seen that in the Holden Caulfield situation when we did Catchers in the Rye, how they kind of morphed into Holden Caulfield. They do this in the film. She becomes the Queen of Diamonds, and he becomes Lincoln, who's the assassination, right? So it's kind of foreshadowing, but they use this vision thing and also this kind of like overlays here to make Iceland into kind of like, and he is assassinated at the end, but it's another motif throughout the whole film that I don't think is in the book, but they decided to do it. Some of these shots are good. You see the cleverness of the shots, like he's in between, and he's in the picture where he's shown, where Marco spots the two people he remembers from his dream, if you remember that. So these guys are spotted as members of the Iron Block or whatever, the back thing. One other sequence just to show the kind of classical illusions and how sharp Condon was. He's talking to Raymond Shaw, getting drunk, and he mentions the Greek myth about Orestes and his mother Clytemnestra, because Orestes avenges the murder of his father Agamemnon by killing his mother Clytemnestra, and it's foreshadowing this whole story because he's going to kill his mom at the end. So it's kind of an interesting kind of thing. He's in love with this other woman too. There's this other thing going on where he's in love with this Jocelyn woman, and he ends up killing her, which is kind of like his mom getting rid of competition. So it's like really dark stuff. But in this sequence, he enters in, this is like a sequence, this queen, I'll try to show the video next time. He walks into a bar. The video is very important, but I'll show it next time. He walks into a bar. Somebody asks says, why don't you pass the time? He starts playing solitaire, and the bartender says, for 11 long years, I have this drunk tied around my neck. Why don't you go take yourself, well, he says to somebody he's talking to, why don't you just go take yourself a cab and go up to Central Park and jump in the lake? And then hearing that, Raymond Shaw goes and jumps in the lake. And this is when Marco realizes something deeper is going on. But I'll show that video. This will be a good place to stop. I'll show that video next time because it shows the Illuminati numbers and the kind of triggering effect and the response. It's like it triggers him to be receptive to suggestibility. Excuse me.
I just want to say one more thing. Q is huge for the Masonic orders. The Order of Quetzalcoatl and all this. The number 17 is this like satanic Masonic number, and Q is the 17th number of the alphabet. And so that might have something to do with it too. There might be more.
Trust the plan.
yeah.
You and I.
That's some real operant conditioning, man. Those poor guys. Yeah.
Anyway, I have 100 slides. I've got so much more to go through. Like, and I'll
This is
get more
great.
video next time.
Awesome.
And I have some readings and things like that, but I think I got 72 slides. But I have a bunch of other material. But well, this is the fictional part. So we'll cover the fiction first, and then we'll go through Oswald Sirhan, and also James Earl Ray, who was in LA at the same time Sirhan. And then 4 months apart. This is almost just like the the attempted killing of Reagan and Lennon, where they were 4 months apart in the 80s, but MLK and RFK are 4 months apart.
Wow, that's probably an occult ritual. Like the 4 months is probably like the way that they have span of time in the year where the when certain energies are happening with the planets, and that might have to do with occult.
These are huge assassinations.
Practices.
The killing of MLK and also RFK.
Right.
And you see the stuff that's reflected in this modern times that we've talked about if we did the Catchers, which is Luigi Mangione traveling weird, Ruth traveling around weird.
Oh, that guy. Whoa.
Crooks is local, but he's kind of weird too. And you'll get that kind of eerie feeling about these so-called assassins and our modern day things, like really strange stuff. Like Ruth and Mangione are both. Ruth, Mangione, and Chapman all came out of Oahu, which is really weird, and travel all around the world. Anyway, we can talk more about that. So this will be the first part. But thanks for having me on. It's great to talk with you. And your insights off the top, like the top of your head, are incredible, man. So that's a lot of stuff I didn't think about.
Thank you so much for joining us on our shows. This is really like mind-bending, opening like everything. And I'm so glad that we can talk about this because we haven't touched on this subject on Wake the Dead yet. And so I look forward. I hope we have like 5 episodes out of this. This is great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I'll get some more video.
Yeah, thank you, William. It's just excellent research, and one of those things everyone thinks of the movie. And like the book, I was inspired to read the book because you're doing it. There's so much there, and it's really foundational. It's not just surface stuff. I mean, this ties into the whole thread of the 20th, 21st century America. It's right there. And in this film, you can see how much material is being presented, just as in the book, that's directly presented to the audience if they're able to see it, which most people probably can't see it, but we can. But yeah, so
in
thanks,
the resonant state with when you're awake and not dead. You can
That's perfect. I love talking with both of you guys. You're great friends, and I'm so glad to be talking and to have this connection with you both. And thank you, listeners, for joining us. Thank you.